Hey there. Welcome to the Pelvis Project podcast. I'm Megan.
And I'm Roxy. We're two pelvic health experts brought together by passion for our careers, entrepreneurship, motherhood, and the desire for intentional relationships.
Join us in our mission to spread pelvic floor awareness and start conversations surrounding the truth behind genuine health, imperfect wellness, and joyfully navigating life. We are so glad you are here with us.
Let's start the conversation.
Good evening.
Hello, Megan. We are coming at you at the end of the year, folks. This is going to be our last recording of 2024, and we're here for it. This has been an exciting year. And we should just recap a little bit. We've had some guests on.
I know.
That were exciting, and we've talked through a lot of different dysfunctions. I'm trying to think what some of our kind of highlights are, but
so this episode, if you're listening on the day it came out, this is Christmas Day. So Merry Christmas for everybody listening. So October is when we celebrated a year of the Pelvis Project. So we started October of 2023. So we launched ourselves. And looking back, Roxy and I think we've talked about this before, but we literally tried to do this ourselves and YouTubed it, spent hours trying to figure it out on GarageBand, and finally just said, okay, money or time. And then we found the lovely Emily, who you guys should go follow her, but she is the one that does all the editing for the podcast and gets our graphics put together. So we owe all of this even happening to her for helping us. So that's been fun. This whole process of, I think, starting a podcast and continuing with it, because let's face, like, this is kind of hard. It's hard to keep up. I'm proud of us, Roxy.
I am too. We haven't missed. We've been late. We've been late on one or two, but we have. Missed. Emily pulled us through too.
Yeah, we took a small break there through the summer. Gave ourselves a little bit of a break, but otherwise it's just something that's kept us very accountable.
Yeah.
Which is good in our lives that we live that are crazy that nobody sees behind the scenes when you're running businesses. So gosh, we launched. I'm trying to remember. We had Lauren Scaife, who is a therapist here in town. We had Kate Morgan on. We had our OT Bestie Paige on.
I think those were all of our guests.
Those were all of our guests. In 2025, we're going to work on having more. So if you have any suggestions or topics, send them to us. We have, next episode, we'll have a guest on, a guest speaker. So stay tuned for that one. So yeah, we're cruising.
Fun. Yep. Okay, Megan, tell me something good. We'll start out there and then we'll hop right in. Blindsided you with that one.
Okay, something good. I'm going to be really honest on this episode here. And I think that the season we're in, a lot of people probably going to resonate, but this is definitely a challenging time. I know everybody talks about the holidays are hard and stuff. And I think that this is the first holiday season where I have struggled myself a little bit. And so I really have had to be very intentional on capturing my thoughts. We actually were just talking about this off recording. There's so much good. So it's a weird thing because I'm humbled by how thankful I am and just so grateful for so many things in my family, and also holding that there are some things that have been quite a challenge. So I think that tell me something good is I'm just incredibly grateful for the circle of people I have around me that I can be vulnerable and open with and share things with. And that when I'm feeling this way, that I have support to encourage and help me through it and just give me like very sound advice and wisdom. That's my tell me something good. I'm just really thankful for having, and you, Roxy.
I gotta follow that. Oh my goodness.
Just say ditto.
Ditto. Yeah, seriously. I think that there's just some, my kind of tell me something good is I think I'm mixed feelings about it. but there's just some changes on my horizon, and we'll maybe chat about it a little more when
Yeah.
it's behind me a little bit more, but nothing terrible, but just some challenges ahead that it's nice because I've been able to forecast it and see it. But there's really some exciting things ahead and some really hard things that are going to be ahead of me. And
Yeah.
I think being able to just like gear up a little bit and I don't know, like see it coming, and be able to prep a little bit and be able to, like you were saying, like capture those thoughts or try to get my mindset just ready for unknowns and uncertainties is kind of, I think, just kind of piggybacking off of like that grateful of
Yeah.
just saying, man, even when things feel crappy or chaos or just hard, like to
Mm-hmm.
be able to have gratitude or be able to say, yeah, and even if that all goes south,
Mm-hmm.
like I have hope and I have, family and I have, all these things that I can still land on. And I think especially this week, I've been thankful for that perspective because I've realized I'm kind of hopefully I'm getting to the end of a season where unintentionally been really selfish and really caught up in like, how am I going to figure these problems out? What
Mm-hmm.
do I do? How do I get myself out of this struggle or this problem today or whatever, right? Like, and really like shifting that perspective and saying, yeah, but what's the point of today? Like, who can I help?
Yeah.
Looking outside of myself, looking away and looking at who I come in contact with and who I can be a blessing to and all of those things. I'm just kind of grateful for some shifting perspectives. I'm not perfect at it by any means. Like it takes me
Sure.
about a half a second to be derailed from that. But just like looking at like being able to just have that mindset or being challenged with trying to have that mindset. I guess I don't even know how
Yeah.
to say it because I'm not in the worst of it and I'm not like ahead of it or it's not
Yeah.
behind me,
Yeah. Right.
So
You're
anyway,
in it. You're
I'm
in
in
it.
it.
You're sitting in it.
And I think
Yeah.
that's everyone can resonate with that though. Like
Yeah.
everyone has a struggle
Yeah.
today, unless you're like
Yeah.
on a beach on vacation. But you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just everyday life stuff is just kind of hard. And I think it's easy, at least for me, to get bogged down and really be looking inside of me or be focused inward instead of outward and realizing that there's still a lot of needs around me and I have a lot to be grateful for and not get like stuck in a rut. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. So the seasons of more challenging with
yeah,
that. And then other times where it's easier. So yeah, if anybody else is feeling that way, I mean, just knowing that like, yeah, you're not alone. And I mean, we know other people are feeling that way.
yeah,
Just finding that person to like talk to about it. And even if you don't like, sometimes you just don't even need any advice back. You just need to have somebody to like talk to about it, you know? So
yeah. Well, this was a good segue into
yeah,
our topic for this evening, and we're going to talk about as we think about Christmas season. I think holidays are always like a time of reflection, but then we're also working towards the end of the year and a fresh year, fresh beginnings. And I think Megan and I were just chatting earlier about just I think a lot of tonight's topic is going to be applicable to a lot of different circumstances or parts of our lives when really in a pelvic health standpoint, we just are thinking about the hope of new or the hope of change or the hope of healing and really kind of diving into that as we're reflecting on the year, we're gearing up for a new year, and we're just kind of in this in between of gratitude and chaos
yeah,
and where are we at, right? So we're
yes,
just really going to be talking about like the hope of new beginnings and thinking about the hope that healing brings and not even in the moment, but even the potential of healing. And when we have patients coming into our treatment rooms, who sometimes are borderline hopeless with the rhythm or the journey that they've been on, and thinking about whether it's, I mean, obviously in our world, it's pelvic health, but it's being able to offer somebody strategies to then give them hope
hmm,
through that healing of what could my life look like without this and being able to get out of the weeds of that.
yeah. Well, and I would venture to say too, and we kind of talk about this in our next episode with our interview that we do, and it's with a mental health therapist. I think we've fallen into kind of a world where maybe somebody appears to have it all together and we are like doing all the things it appears. And so then if you are struggling or have an issue, you start to kind of feel like that hopeless and what's wrong with me. And so just like that, talking about more about what really goes on kind of behind the scenes, I think does provide people with, and that they're not alone when we can share, like, yeah, I see a lot of this. And that automatically is like, oh, there's hope. Oh, okay. And you kind of see that click when somebody realizes they aren't alone. And does seem like in this season, we do see a little bit more of that feeling of aloneness because I think it's dark early. We kind of isolate. Like, this is a time of year, it gets cold, people's joints hurt, stress goes up. So symptoms go up and everything feels like it's crumbling. So I think that that's just really one thing very powerful to know is that 100% you are not alone. And I guarantee you, there's somebody else that has something similar going on. And so there is always hope. Always. I was sending an email the other day to somebody and yeah, it was with a fertility patient and we found out some news about some labs that weren't super ideal, but also still doable. And when I say that, it's just because I'm trying to like not get too much information there, but but my gut and my instincts are there's still a lot of hope and there's still a lot of odds in her favor. And so just that encouragement and that I ended it with like, all things are possible because we really aren't, we have to hold on to that hope. And I know it's scary because it's unknown, but that was just recently something that, yeah, I kind of experienced with somebody that I think it's powerful for me and for them too. Because
Sure.
we are also learning. I feel like as therapists, we're seeing new things all the time. And so sometimes it's like, okay, I'm treading in some water that I haven't experienced very many of, like a specific pattern. And so we're there just to walk with you. Hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of all over the place.
No, I know. That's okay. I appreciate just even as we're talking about this, thinking about the mindset. You were talking about that earlier, even just like the comparison mindset or thinking about when one thing's going wrong, it's easy for us to look at everything else in our life that's going wrong. I know sometimes I struggle with that of like, man, I'm really sucking at this right now. And then I look, I'm like, and I'm sucking at that, and I'm sucking at that, and I'm struggling here, and I'm just like crappy all around. Like, what am I doing good at? Like almost in that
Yes.
mindset. And so I think when we start to win at something, or if we can just get a little bit of traction or a little bit of control in one area, how that mindset can shift so much different instead of feeling like it's crumbling. If we're taking forward steps and we have that hope of a new beginning, or we have that hope of healing or life without a symptom, or whatever, you can fill in the blank, whatever this is, if it's like parenting or marriage or relationships or health or whatever it is, but it's saying, man, instead of how crappy I'm doing at all these things, can we switch that around, gain some traction, do the next one good thing to then just be able to shift that and say, oh, wow, like I actually do have some things in my control. And I think that control piece is powerful. I just had a gal in yesterday that is having some fecal incontinence. Like, how embarrassing, how like she just was so isolated, so embarrassed. She hasn't told anybody, like just all these things, super negative about it, which rightfully so, like not like not in a mean way or like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just she was so like embarrassed, could barely talk about it. Right. And when we started talking through like just options and how pelvic rehab can help and what some ideas we have. And as she started to just see that she actually has a little more control over her body than she was even knew that she did, then like there was hope there, And so just that shift in mindset, I didn't heal her. Her symptoms were no different when she walked out of the door, an hour after she got there. Like symptoms weren't any different. She didn't have a transformation in that 1 hour, but her mindset
She
was
changed.
shifted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like her physical body didn't transform, but her mindset shifted because she had a little bit of, she just got a little bit of traction to have that hope of what could life be like without this? And man, I have something different and new that I can start to try to work towards. You could just tell like the way she walked out was just even better. So I think that mindset, as we're thinking about just new beginnings, the mindset piece is so huge with that.
Yeah, because then when we change that mind, that's where you first got to start, because then the physical changes will start to happen. Because I mean, our mind is so powerful that we could convince ourselves of just about anything, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just want a little blip into my life right now. What I'm trying to convince my brain of, or my brain is trying to convince me of. But yeah, I think that's a good segue into just the basis of we're going into a new year and kind of fresh starts. And although I love to try to think about having fresh starts throughout the year, and I'm going to personally challenge myself to do that maybe like once a quarter of, I don't know, I might even try to do it once every couple months of checking back in and also knowing I can change my mind on stuff instead of this feeling of like, we talk about this in our next episode, but like it'll get better when. But with that, we all know what a new year brings. It brings just fresh hope and new beginnings. And it just represents a great time to kind of look back and look forward. And so, one thing that is part of basically the basis of why we started the podcast was this sense of imperfect wellness. So, when we're thinking about these fresh starts and, new beginnings, we just want to encourage that trying to be perfect in all the things starting the new year it can lead to less benefits. And so basically embracing the imperfection can lead to greater long-term well-being. And that's what we want to encourage is when you're making these changes and these resolutions and all the thing, I would challenge anybody that struggles with perfection to almost make it a goal. So some area in your life, let something be not quite perfect.
I was just talking about this with a patient today. I told her, because I mean, she's very fit. She's a personal trainer. Like
Yeah.
she does a lot of things really well. And we
Yeah.
were working on some things, and I told her, honestly, I want you to shoot for 80%.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
how many things in our life are we doing everything perfect? Like our diets, even the people who are most disciplined in their diets still have cheat days. Like, I
Yeah.
think we have to appreciate quality of life with this. And it really
Yeah.
just resonated with me today as we were talking of like, I need that. I need to do that of saying, let's shoot for 80% and give ourselves grace for the 20, for that
Yeah.
20% and say, you know what? That's okay. Like I'm doing
I,
it 80% of the time, not a lazy
yeah.
way, but just in a
No.
self-compassion
Yeah.
way.
You're doing that 80%, 100% instead of being perfect and struggling to even have a life that's worth and being enjoying, 80% and do that 80% really well because you get that 20% that you're able to, cut yourself some slack. But I have seen a trend. I have patients come in and I'll say, okay, like, tell me about this last week. Like, tell me something good. Tell me something, and they'll say, well, I know I should have done my exercises more and I'm going to work on it. And I say, okay. I'm like, well, how many times? Tell me about like, how often did you get it in? And they're like, 3 to 4 times this week. And I'm like, that's fantastic. 3 to 4 times. And you came in here and watered it down like you didn't do anything. And on top of that, you work full time, you're a parent, you're a wife, you're all these things. So I challenge my patients that are perfectionists. I'm like, 3 times a week is 100%. Leave it at that. Like that is it. It is not an everyday. And they get almost probably better outcomes because they're able to kind of chill out about it. So I don't know. I mean, and listen, I'm not perfect on this either. I'm something I'm definitely going to work on. I am definitely not hitting my perfectionistic tendencies right now, which I don't want to. It is something I have challenged myself, which it's funny because nobody can see the screen right now, but Roxy can see what's behind me. And this is our office and it is filled with Christmas presents and it's a disaster. and old me would like lose my mind. And I'm just kind of like, this shows that a family lives here and that we're working hard to provide for our family. And I can't get to it. Yeah, it's something that I myself personally going to work on. And I would also really encourage people to maybe look in if you don't know like your Enneagram or doing like a PI index, which is like personality index, to kind of learn a little bit more about yourself and know that if there's an area that you are kind of struggling in, sometimes it's just that you are having to do things that don't necessarily have the rhythm or the alignment of what you're like, who you are. And so it can be a little bit more draining, more challenging. I've learned that about myself and what my personality is and why I do feel very exhausted and fatigued from certain situations because it pushes me so far out of my zone of where I thrive. So looking into stuff like that. So when we're thinking about like our fitness goals and our like New Year's goals of, I just consider those things because that could then help you strive better in other areas.
Yeah, I think too, when we're talking about change, a lot of times those are habit overhauls. And if your body's stuck in a habit, anything different than that habit is going to
Yeah.
be meet resistance. And so just that knowing that we just need to give our body something different. And so perfect doesn't need to be the goal. We can fine tune, we can come in after the fact and clean things up. But overhauling a habit is stinking hard.
Yeah.
And so if you're going into like a New Year's resolution or you're going in to try to heal, you're going into a season of healing or a season of just like resolution. If I want to change this or I want to do better this year, I think appreciating that overhauling habits takes time and it takes repetitions and it's in the boring and the mundane that the real magic kind of happens there. And so just looking at rhythms and trends rather than perfection and
Mm-hmm.
taking the pressure off of yourself to do a 180 in a habit in
Yeah.
an instant because that's not reality and you wouldn't expect that of anybody. And so we don't need to be expecting that of ourselves either.
Yeah. And I know I've mentioned it before and Roxy and I were talking about ahead of time, but just those little layering in little small things of small changes and then adding to it. And so then that builds, so then that habit is changed is a lot easier. And doing the, oh gosh, it's slipped my mind, the habit stacking type of thing
Mm-hmm.
in a sense. And for some people that doesn't work well. And for some people it does. But I am all about building in, like maybe it's you start with 1 day a week and we do 1 day a week for 2 weeks. And then, and maybe it's a week, but for some people it needs to be 2 weeks, 1 day a week for 2 weeks. And then we're going to go, okay, we're going to add in this. And now we're doing these 2 days a week for 2 weeks. And then it just is easy when we break it off into almost like little, instead of saying, you got to go do a workout every single day for an hour out of nowhere. That's hard. I mean, I'm struggling to lay in an infrared sauna blanket, lay in it for 20 minutes a day. I can't even get that in. All I got to do is lay down. And it feels good. That's been my biggest challenge. I'm like, oh my goodness. So my plan is to do exactly that. It's one day, and I will do 1 day for as long as it takes for me to feel like I have the capacity to maybe do another.
There
That's
you go.
my plan.
We need to write this down and circle back to this, hold you accountable.
Yes.
Oh
Um,
goodness. Well,
yeah.
I think the takeaway is this hope of new beginnings. And as we wrap up tonight, Megan and I are not shy about just sharing where our hope is, where our hope lies. And that is as we go into the Christmas season, just the birth of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and the hope it has brought for us that no matter what's happening on this earth and no matter what circumstances we're bogged down in and no matter what, he has conquered this world
Yep.
and he can allow us to be then more than conquerors for whatever it is in front of us, whether it's a health issue or it's a bad habit or it's a mindset issue. And he promises that if we seek him first, then all the things that we crave in this world will be given to us, but it might not look like exactly how we want it to, which can be
Mhm.
scary as we go into a new beginning and we don't see the outcome and we don't know how it's going to go and we don't know if we're going to fail partway through or if we're going to struggle or whatever. We just want to encourage you with that the ultimate hope comes from the Lord.
Yeah. And if right now you're struggling with, fear and doubt, just a good reminder that, the Lord doesn't give us a spirit of fear. So, you know, capture those thoughts. That's what we're doing. And be intentional with your time and where you're putting your eyeballs, what you're
Mhm.
taking in, and find some quiet time. And if you're listening to this today, that's what we would encourage because it's Christmas and it gets crazy. So find some quiet time between now and the end of the year and just take stock of where you've been and where you're going and thank your body for what it's been doing. And even if it's not perfect, listen to it. Like listen to what it's telling you and go find some help. Yeah. It's exciting to make changes. Yeah. Hard and exciting. So we hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we will be back after the first of the year with our first guest of the year. Yeah. All right. We'll
Merry
keep this
Christmas.
conversation going. Yeah. Merry Christmas. And thanks for listening. We'd love any comments and rate us on Apple. And we'll talk in a couple weeks. Thank you so much for joining us this week on the Pelvis Project podcast. Help us continue the conversation by liking and sharing this episode with friends. And if you really want to do us a solid, leave us a review. If you'd like to follow us on social, check out the show notes for links. And remember, this week, take a deep breath and relax your pelvic floor.